Welcome to the coming apocalypse. Evangelist and pastor Paul Begley will take you on a journey into the end times prophecy. He'll examine current world events and explain how they relate to the end times. For decades, Pastor Begley has provided people all over the world with an understanding of today's world events from a biblical perspective. Now, here's your host, Pastor Paul Begley.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Welcome to today's broadcast. Wow, you're in for a powerful broadcast. Brock, I forgot to shut the door. You're in for a great program. We're using the Fair Use Act in good faith. This work contains fair use of copyrighted and non-copyrighted images from the public domain and the web for non-commercial, non-profit, educational purposes only. We want to help enhance the teaching of the end times, of the current world events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. And you're here, and praise God, the backup channel is working live. And so you can go, and those of you that are already there, you already know that the backup channel's on, working, and it's going to flow just like normal. Praise God. So please, if you're watching at my website at paulbegleyprophecy.com, or if you're watching on new live stream or Roku satellite television through new live stream, or if you're watching on Periscope, or any of the archives, including if you're watching this as an archive on my normal main YouTube channel, you might want to go ahead and go to my backup channel and subscribe today. Please subscribe today. We've had 2,000 people subscribe in the last 24 hours. So you want to get over there and subscribe. That way you'll always be alerted when I go live if you subscribe. What? So go to the backup channel. What's the name of the backup channel? Paul Begley Prophecy. So go to my YouTube backup channel, type up in the bar there, Paul Begley Prophecy channel, and then click there and then scroll down, and there you'll find it. It's only about 8 or 9 down. Okay, just scroll down a little bit and there it is. It'll say Paul Begley Prophecy channel. Click on it, subscribe, watch live there. We'll be live there every day, all right? Good to see everybody here today. You're in for a great program. First time ever, we're going to have a guest by the name of Dr. Richard Dolan. He is a UFO expert. He's actually a UFOologist. Now, he spoke at the Steve Quayle conference in Branson, Missouri. He was one of the experts that Steve Quayle brought in from a secular perspective. And he came in to talk about the fact that he is an American historian who is actually researching a lot of different things historically. He likes to dig into the declassified and unclassified documentation. While doing so, he kept running into all kinds of, quote, UFO reports that were being covered up and hid by the CIA and the FBI and other three-letter alphabet soup agencies. And so what he decided to do was to dig a little deeper. Using his connections in Washington and different places, he began to dig deep. And he began to uncover different people who said they had had an encounter of a paranormal activity. From what stratosphere or what dimension or where exactly? Was it angelic, like the Bible says? Was it demonic, like the Bible says? Was it something else? Well, we're going to find out. He's interviewed 68 people who have given him firsthand account of encounters of an unexplained origin. And we're going to try to find out from Dr. Richard Dolan how, a lot of times there's theory, there's fact, and then there's biblical prophecy. And in between that, a lot of times is where the truth lies. And we're going to try to find out a little bit about that, get an opinion. We've never had a UFOologist on our broadcast in 8.5 years. So it's, this is some of the stuff people keep asking me about. So I said, okay, we'll ask a guy. I met him, I heard him speak, met his wife, nice people. And so we're going to bring him on today. Guys, just so you know, Billy Night Train just threw up on the chat room there, just said breaking. Hurricane Willa is now a Category 5, Brock, Category 5. And what's really weird about this hurricane, nobody saw this coming. Everybody was watching the caravan coming up the road toward the border of America that's now swollen to 7,000 people. Somebody's funding that crowd. I mean, they keep bringing cash to them, water, food. It's unbelievable, the funding. But as these people head toward the border in the caravan, there's a hurricane that's going to crash into Mexico. And literally, it looks like it's going to cross into Mexico, and it's on a collision course with the caravan. What? So if the Mexican army can't stop the caravan, apparently they tried to stop it. Alan in Texas gave me some very good information on this. The Mexican army tried to slow this caravan down. They tried to shut it down, and they apparently said they can't. So now this is a caravan army, I take it. And so this caravan army is marching toward the border of America, marching on the border. And just in time for the election. And so we're going to watch and see how this plays out. But it may be that the hand of God has to come involved with Hurricane Willa to see. Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. And again, I don't even know what to say other than we have a caravan headed through Mexico toward America, and we have a hurricane coming out of the Pacific called Hurricane Willa that may actually be on a collision course with the caravan. So we got to pray for people's safety and all of that, because we don't know exactly what all. It's a Category 5. What? Something biblical's going on here, guys, with the signs of the second coming of Christ. And so we're going to keep a close eye on all of this. But I want to do this. Let's go to Max. Let's go to Max. We're going to be, again, Richard Dolan. Dr. Richard Dolan will be joining us in a little bit. But first, let's go to Max and let him read from the King James Version of the Bible. Because in the Bible, it talks about doleful creatures, owls, satyrs. Satyrs are half man, half goats. No, you heard me right. It's in the Bible. It's in the book of Isaiah, which was actually found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when they wrote out the Dead Sea Scrolls, every word is exactly correct. So what are doleful creatures? Why are they and owls and satyrs, half man, half goat? What? Why is it in the Bible? And why is the Bible prophesying that these things are going to come upon the land? And I'm going to have to ask Richard Dolan about the doleful creatures and satyrs. Are you serious? But anyway, let's go right now. I asked Steve Quayle, and he shook his head and kind of did one of those. He said, we'll look deeper. Okay, it's in the Word. Brock, here we go. It's the, let's go right now to the Max will read from the Isaiah chapter 13. Go to Isaiah chapter 13.
Isaiah 13. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain. Exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land.
What?
Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And they shall be afraid, pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it.
This is not good.
But the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it shall be as the chaste roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. Every one that is found shall be thrust through, and every one that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye shall not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah.
What?
It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there.
Listen to this.
But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there.
What?
And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged.
I don't know what to tell you, folks. It's in the Bible. Okay, it's absolutely in the Bible. But the scripture tells you that the Lord says that there will be wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and the houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs, which are half men, a half man, half goat, shall dance there. And wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Now you can say, well, this is metaphoric, Pastor Begley. I don't think so. If you study the book of Isaiah, nothing in the book of Isaiah is metaphoric. Everything is literal ramification and revelation. So we're living in a different time. I'm just throwing that out there. It's in there. And then you might have to spend some time also thinking that one through. But we're living in a time like we've never seen before. And in the last days, there's going to be information coming out that's going to be quite disturbing, shocking. These are end-time manifestations that we're not seeing. There's no half man, half goats walking around this planet. What are the doleful creatures? And I understand what owls are, and I even understand what a dragon is. But do you really have a clue here how these incredible information that's going to come? I mean, the manifestation of beast. And then you start talking Nephilim. Now you can get into Genesis 6, and you can talk about all these other things. And then is there going to be close encounters of a God kind? I mean, are we going to be dealing with disclosure or some kind of is the demons of hell? Is the strong delusion coming? I mean, is there going to be confusion in the land? Of course there will. Lucifer and the Luciferians are going to do everything they can to try to derail the kingdom of God. Oh, and then Brock, you have to bring it up. And of course, there's Planet X, or is it Nibiru, or is it Planet Number 9, or is it the Goblin, or is it the Dwarf Star, or is it Wormwood? Look, folks, something's shaking and quaking the heavens. Matter of fact, let's go there right now. 3 mega earthquakes slam into Canada last night while you were sleeping soundly in your bed with visions of sugar plums in your head. The Canadians were shaking and quaking. The devil's back was breaking. Their mind was aching. We're not faking. Heidi this morning scrambled me some eggs, but there was no bacon. And what kind of medication are you taking? All of this was taking place today. Look at this. Look at this. Boom, boom, boom. There it is. Port Hardy, 6.6. Then Port Hardy, Canada, 6.8. Mega. Then Port Hardy, Canada, 6.5, okay? And then here come the aftershocks, 4.9, 4.3. And then there was a few more quakes. Then Port Hardy, Canada, 4.4. And that's right on the Cascadia fault line, guys. Right on the line. Japan had a 5.0. And of course, the southeastern East Pacific Rise had an earthquake of 4.8. There was a 4.6 in Costa Rica. There was another 4.6 just a minute ago in Tiakistan. And I could go through the whole list, but there's no need. I mean, the big story here, without question, is Canada. Oh, Canada. But I got an Albanian flag. What? Albania? It's because we got a brother in the Lord in Albania. And he wrote us a letter and sent me some Albanian coffee that we're going to have this afternoon. Brock and I are. But here's what he said. He said, "Hello, Pastor Paul and Sister Heidi. I am Sylvester from Tirana, Albania. I am 24 years old. I am a Christian Catholic, and I've been following your online church and ministry for almost 4 years. I came up by chance on your videos. They came up as recommended for you." I like that. At my YouTube channel. I think it was around 2014. I was always interested to learn about Bible prophecy, especially on the last days, since today it seems that the church is ashamed to speak for the last days because people might not believe them. And because today there are many who put dates, even though this is not a Christian thing to do. Today, it seems that the last days are a myth or just a symbolic thing, he says. No one preaches anymore on the second coming of Christ. They say it's a myth, or they preach it very rarely. Though all my life going to church, both among the Catholics and the evangelicals, I hardly can remember any priest or pastor preaching on the second coming of Christ, at least not publicly, because there are some who will talk about it behind closed doors. I found your ministry a blessing, different from other online preachers, since your altar call is for everybody to be saved, and especially for the body of Christ to unite in these last days. This kid's got it right. This kid's got it right. He's in Albania, and he's got it right. And I have shared some of your videos to my friends at my church. And I want to thank you for your work, which has inspired me to speak to Christians about these things. The interesting thing is that in the Catholic Church history, there have been many people or saints who have had visions or revelations about the last days. And especially, they all agree on one crucial point: the church of apostasy and the falling away of many believers. But unfortunately, no one speaks publicly in the churches or in the meetings about these revelations. Well, if they don't preach the ultimate revelation of John, no wonder they don't speak about these other small revelations. I want to thank you for this awesome online church, for letting people know and being aware of these signs and bringing them to Christ. The blessing of our Lord Jesus, of the angels, and of the saints be upon you, Pastor Paul and Sister Heidi, and your family, and your online church. God bless. Sylvester of Albania. This is a 24-year-old kid who's been watching me for 4 years. He's got it right. And he's not the only one. This is an amazing online church of believers who understand the time we're living in. And we're living in the times that the Bible said would come to pass. I want to welcome all of you that are watching us live at New Live Stream. Plus, many of you are watching live at my website at paulbegleyprophecy.com, Roku satellite television, Also, folks are listening on the direct radio line. They're dialing this number, 605-472-5791. That's 605-472-5791. The access code is 322-656-pound. That is where the earthquakes hit. All three of them. Look at that. There's Vancouver, Canada, and boom, boom, boom. 6.6, 6.8, 6.5 mega earthquakes shaking the earth. And this is a sign of the end times. There's no question about it. Matter of fact, the solar winds are blowing fairly normal at 367 kilometers per second. But there has been 48 fireballs that have broke through the Earth's atmosphere. Actually, Brock, I haven't pulled that up yet, so let me do that. But these fireballs, hang on one second. These fireballs, quite extraordinary. There's 48 of them, but part of the reason is because we're going through the Halley's Comet debris. So, but still, the fireballs are coming from different directions, but you'll see here in the chart that we'll show you here that, well, it's quite significant, where all of these fireballs are coming from, okay? 48 of them in the last 24 hours. There's the chart. Now, the ones in the light blue, that's because that is the Halley's Comet debris field. The others are coming from all kinds of different directions, but those are meteorites that are breaking through the Earth's atmosphere and are being spotted. That's the ones reported. You have to know there's a whole lot more than that. You got a big oceans all over the planet, okay? Now, as asteroids are concerned, I got good news for you. There are no asteroids scheduled to near miss the Earth for a couple days. But I want to focus on one, Brock. Look up there. This happened Friday. This was not on the chart when we went live Friday. It's 2018 UA, October 19th. That was not there when we were live. Look at it. How close did it come? It hit the Earth. It actually hit in the ocean, but it's a little bitty one. You can see it's only 3 meters in size. So it created a ripple. It created some kind of a small tsunami somewhere out there in the ocean on some island. It's okay, but we never saw that one coming until it hit us. It's important to understand that even when the chart says, don't worry, nothing's coming, okay? Oh, by the way, talking about not knowing what's going on out there, I got to bring this up, guys. I mean, I can't do this. There is reports now everywhere. I broke this last night in the live show, and I want to share it with you right now before I get back to the hurricanes and what have you. But remember the Sunspot, New Mexico Observatory? Well, we are now seeing a total shutdown of the access to space. This is a report that's going to blow your mind. But according to the reports, we know what happened on September 6th. They shut down the Sunspot Observatory in New Mexico. Why? Well, they shut it down. We don't know why. For 8 days, it was completely shut down. The post office was closed. Half the people were relocated to California, and the sheriff of the county was told to leave the county and couldn't come back for 8 days. While the FBI, men in black helicopters, 24 men in black with black computers, was crawling all over this thing. Well, why? Well, and I kept saying, guys, there's something going on, and I believe there's something going on in the sky. Well, following this mysterious evacuation shutdown of the New Mexico Solar Observatory back on September 6th, along with public access being removed from the Axis 232D network dome camera located in Sydney, Australia. Why did they shut that down? We're now seeing a lot of buildup of failures and shutdowns and lack of access to deep space. On March 27th, NASA delayed the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope. And it's supposed to send this thing up to space to see everything, a brand new state of the art. Guess what? They're not going to send it up there till 2020. Why? All right, no explanation. Well, they say there's a small tear in the tennis-sized court sun shield that they need to work on. All right. Now, on June 10th, NASA placed the Opportunity Mars rover into safe mode due to a sandstorm. Well, the sandstorm's over, but they've never turned it back on. And then on September 1st, both SpaceX Falcon 9 and an Israeli aerospace industries built Amos 6 satellite, it blew up on the launch pad and never got into space. I wonder why. And then September 5th, a hole was discovered in the International Space Station, Brock. Somebody drilled a little hole in there, seeping out air. What? Sabotaging the space station. And so there's 3 astronauts still left up there, taking shallow breaths, waiting on supplies. Well, guess what happened? On September 19th, the NASA Mars rover called Curiosity, it went offline. They say it was for an unknown glitch. What? But wait, October 5th, the Hubble telescope. It's been up there forever. Okay, guys, it's gone into safe mode due to a failed gyroscope. And then on October 5th, that was October 5th, then October 10th, a few days ago, NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, it's gone offline due to also a failed gyroscope. And then the next day, October 11th, that the Suez rocket used to transport astronauts and supplies up to the space station, they launched it out of Russia. Guys, it had to go into an emergency landing with 2 cosmonauts, and they couldn't get up to the space station. So those 3 guys are still up there taking shallow breaths, trying to hang on without food, water, supplies, and a little hole in the side of the wall. What's going on, guys? And oh, by the way, NASA has shut down the SOHO space weather camera. They shut that thing down on September 19th. They said it's due to maintenance issues. And of course, out of the 36 total solar observatories in the world, 7 of their webcams have simultaneously been turned off. Why? Now, I'm sorry, but something's going on in space. They don't want us to see. Is it Nibiru? Is it Planet X? Is there even such a thing as a Nibiru or Planet X? Or is it something else? And maybe Dr. Richard Dolan. Is this the time of disclosure, or is this the time of concealment? I mean, do we really know what in the world we're dealing with here? And look, guys, seriously, I mean, I deal with demonic spirits and angelic presence of God and the Holy Ghost, and I understand people are dealing with all kinds of different things, but I'm just wondering, what is this about that they're closing the cameras on everything? You guys got to ask the question. I want to welcome all of you that are watching live on my backup YouTube channel. There's over 404 of you that are there, and that's really good because we're getting that backup channel going. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let people know where the backup channel is. If you say, well, where is the backup channel? It is, if you're watching this on the archives on my regular channel, the backup channel is called Paul Begley Prophecy Channel. That's it. Just type it up there, Paul Begley Prophecy Channel, and then you go there, subscribe, and then when I go live, you'll be notified, okay? And that way you can stay up to speed with everything going on, all right? And anyway, we need to build up that backup channel. Oh, yes, we do. We're dealing with a lot of things out there. Okay, guys, while that's going on, again, Dr. Richard Dolan is going to join us, a UFOologist. You know, I just want to ask him about things. I mean, there's a lot of unexplained things that people ask me every day. I mean, I get emails every day. Paul, what is this? I get pictures sent to me every day. What is this? Matter of fact, speaking of pictures, there's a guy by the name of John. I'm not going to give you his last name. John is a contractor, United States government contractor, who has already served 20 years for the United States and now works as a government contractor in Afghanistan. He showed me a picture on his cell phone of the sun. Now there's the picture. Do you see way up there in the right hand? Looks like about 1 o'clock almost 2 o'clock, let's say, on the sun. You see that little black speck? Well, he took his cell phone and he began to enlarge that. He took that picture one morning, and that's what was there. Actually, that's grainy, because when he showed it to me, it was what looked like a little capsule with windows in it, okay? Like a little spacecraft of some kind. Was it a military craft, or is it you know, I don't know. That's the best that Brock could do, taking the picture. He sent us an email and blowing it up. But I saw it in clarity. It was a little capsule of some sort. It had windows in it going around. Okay, I seen it as clear as day. And what I'm going to do is track this man down and say, can you send it to me again? Can you send me the scanned, the close-up? Is it a drone? Is it some kind of military craft that we don't know about? I mean, look, I've already looked at some of the 1939 hovercrafts that the Nazi Germany had. They were hovercrafts. They would look like UFOs if you saw them. I mean, and they literally hovered and they moved around, did different things. So I'm not definitely. Look, that was 1939, okay, and you had crafts that could do that kind of stuff. So I don't know what kind of crafts the military powers that be, China, United States, Russia, I don't know what they might actually have now. Okay, it's got to be so sophisticated and so advanced. But we got to go to another level. Let's forget about the little spacecrafts that we see, and you notice every time one's spotted, it's usually close to a military base of some sort. You know, whether you're in Area 51 or you're in one of these other locations in Arizona or New Mexico or somewhere, or in different parts of the world. But what we can't fully get our hands around is 68 interviews with people who've had encounters. What does that mean? Now, Jacob had an encounter in the Bible of a ladder that went up into heaven. And he saw angels going up and down into heaven, into the new dimensions. Apostle Paul said that he knew a man 14 years ago, whether in the body or out of the body, he don't even know. And he said he ascended into the third heaven. I'll keep going. He said he ascended into the third heaven. Well, what's that? Okay. So there's some unexplained, doleful creatures, satire. I want to know what's going on here. And we're going to find out more about that. And we'll talk more about that. Guys, the 5 waves of energy. Mike from around the world. We hope to have him. You need to stay tuned. Close to my channel, close to my website. Mike around the world. We're asking him and David Mead, which night of the week can they come on and be on the night show and tell us about what's going on. David Mead wants to talk about Planet X and the earthquakes, and here we go, Shocktober. But Mike from the world, Mike from around the world talks about the 5 waves of energy that he says it's going to hit the NASA deep space probes on October 25th. And what does that mean? And does Mike got an update for us on that or anything else out there? So, Mike's very knowledgeable in these areas, and so we're trying to track him down and have him locked down. As soon as we get him confirmed, we'll bring him on and discuss the 5 waves of energy plus anything else. Also, we're trying to track down David Mead, and we know he's hiding on an island somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico in an undisclosed location, and we'll bring him on to talk about Planet X and the times we're living in, okay? So stay tuned to both of those. We're looking for both of those guys, no question about it. Hurricane Willa, a monster. It's a Category 5, as Billy Night Train just told us a few moments ago. Let's get an update on Hurricane Willa. Let me find it. I've got it somewhere here. It's an extremely dangerous hurricane, according to the Associated Press, and it's headed right for Mexico. There you see it. Now, what's really weird about this? Do you see the path it's going? Well, at the time when it gets to where it's going, it may crash right into the caravan. What? Wait a minute. The caravan, which is now swollen to 7,000 people, the Mexican army said they tried to stop it and they couldn't stop it. That's a weak army. So what you have there is a caravan army now marching on America. And as they're marching on, there's a hurricane all of a sudden. And that hurricane, Willa, is going to crash into Mexico and it's going to cut across the country right toward the caravan. Are you serious? Does that even compute with you? Do you have a clue? Well, look, Hurricane Willa has grown rapidly into extremely dangerous Category 5 in the eastern Pacific Ocean, and it's on path to smash into Mexico's western coast by Wednesday. What? Look at this thing from a satellite position. The government there has ordered coastal regional schools to close today and got everybody now preparing. Look, this thing came up on all of us. We didn't have a clue. I mean, this thing came out of nowhere in the last few minutes, okay? Unbelievable. I mean, when I say last few minutes, I mean in the last few hours. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said that Willa could produce life-threatening storm surge, wind, and rainfall over portions of southwestern and west central Mexico beginning tomorrow. It's predicted that Willa could become a Category 5. Well, guess what? It is. And we heard Billy Night Train just told us that a few minutes ago in a chat room over there in our backup channel at Paul Begley Prophecy YouTube channel, live. And so this is going to create life-threatening riptide conditions, okay? The hurricane warnings were posted for Mexico's western coast, and it's definitely coming. There's no question about it. Hurricane Willa. Are you serious? Hurricane Willa may crash into the caravan. This is unbelievable. I mean, nobody can make this stuff up. Oh, by the way, we had a terrible scene in India. I got to tell you, we talked about last night a little bit. There was a Hindu festival going on in which they were burning an effigy of a demon god, a demon called Ravana. And while the effigy of this demon was burning, they were firing off firecrackers, and there you're seeing the picture, and they were doing it over near the railroad tracks. So hundreds of people then started getting closer, sort of like the Burning Man effigy thing that goes on, in the desert here in America, or like the burning of a man effigy to the god Moloch, the owl, that the Bohemian Grove does. Okay, just saying. Well, these people were burning an effigy of a demon named Ravana during a Hindu festival when a train come out of nowhere and run over 60 people and injured 50. What were they doing on the railroad track watching? And they never heard the train. The train never blew a whistle, and the people never heard the train because they were cheering, and the explosions of the fireworks was going on, and they never saw the train coming. I mean, this is just the most bizarre story that I think I could ever talk about. And speaking of train crashes, well, we've just had a breaking news coming out of Taiwan. There's been a train crash that has hit and killed 22 people over in Taiwan today. A horrific scene. There's the actual footage Brock is showing you. 22 are dead. 100 people are injured as the train derails off the tracks there in Taiwan. Now the question is, why would that happen? What caused that to happen? Is it faulty rail? Is it the train going too fast? Was the heavy monsoons that's been going on this year weaken the tracks, expand the rails a little bit too wide? Who knows? Okay, but something caused this horrible train crash in Taiwan, leaving 22 dead and 100 people injured. Pray for these folks, just like I want you to pray for the people in India who were tragically run over by a train. And while that's going on, you talk about stories getting bizarre. What do you want me to do about 63 dead unborn babies in a freezers in a funeral home in Detroit? What am I supposed to do about that? Perry Funeral Home, Detroit, Michigan. Why were they even there? This is not an abortion clinic. So why were 63 aborted babies in the freezer and in boxes at the Perry Funeral Home in Detroit? Does anybody get a clue on this one? Heidi's actually doing some tremendous research on this story, and let me put it this way. I'm going to do it on Patreon because there's no way. I already know how it works in the real world now of supposedly free speech. There is no way I can share that here. So I will do it on Patreon. It's going to blow your mind when you find out the rest of the story. All right. Now, while that's just something to pray about, and just, by the way, you think about things that are getting bizarre. What do you want me to do about this? Monkeys stone a man to death in India. I'm not joking. A 72-year-old man has been killed by monkeys. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Let me show you what's going on here. Okay, this story, I'm still struggling with this story because this is like the Planet of the Apes kind of thing, all right, where the apes rise up against people. It literally is happening in a town in India. A 72-year-old man has been killed by a group of aggressive rogue monkeys that were throwing bricks at the man and stoned him to death. They had found bricks and carried him up in a tree and was storing them. And then they started throwing them and killing a man because he was below the tree picking stuff up that they apparently didn't want him to have. Or did they set this guy up to be killed? I mean, why in the world? Who ever heard of monkeys carrying bricks and making weapons out of bricks? Are you listening to what I'm telling you? This happened. A man has been stoned to death by a group of rogue monkeys who threw bricks at him from a tree, according to reports. The 72-year-old man suffered a head and chest wounds in an attack that later pronounced him dead in the hospital. The man was collecting pieces of dry wood underneath the tree when the group of monkeys in the tree launched their bricks and stoned him to death on Thursday. It's believed the monkeys had armed themselves with bricks they collected earlier from a rundown building in the village, because these monkeys run wild and there's protected species, so the people can't really do anything with them. Now look, I was in India this year and I saw monkeys running around. They run in packs. They do. They run in packs. I was in the car and I was watching them, and Sammy said, oh yeah, they run in packs. And he said, you know, you don't want to be out there by yourself with 20 monkeys, because if they decide to turn on you, okay, it can get ugly real fast. So having said that, villagers have repeatedly complained that these aggressive monkeys in the area have made their lives hell. That's their words. But the animals are a protected species, so little they can do. But now these monkeys are picking up, they're creating weapons. What? Is this the Planet of the Apes? And now, this is crazy. I mean, the man's brother told the Times of India, he said the monkeys threw more than 20 bricks at him. It wasn't just one brick fell out of the tree by accident, hit him in the head and killed him. No, these monkeys threw the bricks. These monkeys went and got the bricks, carried the bricks up in the tree, set up there and had them stored, and then attacked a guy. That's all calculated, guys. That's all. That is not, I mean, come on. I mean, are you serious? We're talking demonic monkeys here. And they threw them from quite a height, so they were pretty high in the tree, so that when these bricks hit them, they killed them. These are rogue monkeys. They are the real culprits, And they must pay for it, this man said. The family has lodged a formal complaint. They've named the monkeys as the accused, but the police insisted they cannot prosecute a monkey and have declared the man dead was an accident. But they threw 20 bricks at him, so that's not an accident. So what do you do here? Deadly attacks by monkeys have been on the rise throughout the country. Wildlife experts say that these monkeys are becoming more and more aggressive. Back in 2007, a deputy mayor of India's capital of Delhi died after being attacked by a horde of wild monkeys. I'm telling you. So this is getting crazier by the minute, okay? So I'm just letting you know, I mean, you're talking about doleful creatures. You're talking about owls. You're talking about dragons. You're talking about half man, half goat, a half man, half goat satires that the Bible says in Isaiah 13 are going to be on the planet. Whether you believe it or not, it is the word of the Lord, okay? It's the same prophet who told you that a son was born unto us in the city of David, okay? The same prophet who said, you know, he was stricken and smitten. He was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Isaiah 53. The same prophet who said in Isaiah 61, for the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he hath anointed me to preach the gospel of good tidings of great things. All right, so we're talking about the same prophet whose scriptures were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and are now in the Dead Sea Scroll Museum. This same prophet said the last days, or at some point, there will be these doleful creatures, these owls, these dragons in palaces, and half man, half goat animals dancing in the streets. Can somebody help me understand that one? Where's Dr. Richard Dolan? Well, but wait, there's more. Guys, I forgot. There was a cyclone in Yemen. What? We're in the last days, okay? We're absolutely in the last days. That's all there is to it. We are in the last days. Yeah, half man, half goat. You heard me right. That's what a satire is. Are we talking transhumanism? Joey Riviera, that's a great response. Is that why guys like Steve Quayle are keeping a close eye on it? Now we know that this half man, half robot, or the integrating of AI technology, we know that's all part of these end times. Now let's talk about this cyclone. The cyclone called Cyclone Lubin hit Yemen. 12 people are dead and 126 people are injured. Brock's got some photos on this. Again, unbelievable, catastrophic events. That was the cyclone that crashed into Yemen, which is real rare. Again, a very rare storm. We've seen hurricanes in the Mediterranean. Remember the Mediterranean migraine, or whatever they call that thing? We've seen 5 typhoons hit Japan. We've seen record monsoons and blood moons and cyclones and tsunamis that kill over 2,000 people in Indonesia, and hurricanes. And now we got Hurricane Willa. Will it hit the caravan? Hurricane Willa, will it hit the caravan? It's headed toward the caravan. So I don't know. I mean, every time I turn around, every time I think things are going to settle down, they seem to get crazier. But the big story out of the Middle East I got to tell you about. What? Can I get some water? I got some ice water over here. I just... It's just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Yeah, Patreon's real easy. Just sign up for Patreon. It's real easy. And that way you can go there and get information that's the sensitive information, okay? Here's what we got to deal with here, and that is, you're looking at Erdogan. On the left, that's Erdogan. That's the president of Turkey, and he's shaking hands with Jordan's King Abdullah. Now, you won't believe this today, but for 25 years, Jordan and Israel have been in a peace treaty. It's worked beautifully, where there's about 1,000 acres of farmland that's over there in the Jordanian area that's owned by Israelis who've been farming there since 1920. Okay? There you see Jordan. You see, so it's right along the border with Jordan. And these are Israelis who own the land, but it's in the nation of Jordan. So there was a peace agreement signed in 1994 that said Israel's going to pay money to Jordan to let these Israelis stay there and farm this rich, beautiful land. They make a lot of great produce there, over 1,000 acres, and let's just leave them alone, okay? Well, Jordan signed the agreement, said let's make it a peace treaty. Now remember, Israel controls that. Israel, the 1,000 acres is actually in Jordan, but Israelis farm the land. And remember, the Temple Mount is actually in Israel, but Jordan manages the Temple Mount. And that was all part of this understanding to keep peace between Israel and Jordan. They've fought enough. But Jordan has just announced they are not going to renew the 25-year deal. They want the farms back. They want the land back. So does that mean they're going to take land that is owned by Israeli people that they have been farming it since 1920? Are they going to take the land from these Israelis? Well, King Abdullah of Jordan said yesterday that he was not going to extend the 25-year deal that allows Israel to use 2 treks of territory along its border, just as Israel said it was still planning to try to negotiate an extension to the agreement. Much of the land in the northwestern part of the kingdom of Jordan in the south is used by Israeli farmers, some of whom were given private land ownership rights and special travel rights in the 1994 peace treaty between the 2 countries. So they own the land, but it's actually part of Jordan. I don't think it's a problem. You just say, okay, you let those people, it's their land, they own it, right? Well, I don't know. The agreement is going to expire next year. There you're looking at Benjamin Netanyahu on the left, and that's the king of Jordan on the right. King Abdullah has been under increased public pressure to end this arrangement with Israel. He told senior Jordanian politicians that the kingdom wanted to exercise its full sovereignty over the 2 areas, according to Petra state news agency. There are Jordanian lands, and they will remain Jordanian land, said the monarch. In an era of regional turmoil, his kingdom is sandwiched between Syria to the north, Iraq to the east, and Israel to the west. Jordan wanted to protect its national interests, said King Abdullah. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking after Abdullah's comments on Sunday, acknowledged that Jordan wanted to exercise its option to end this arrangement. But this is a peace treaty arrangement, okay? He said Israel was entering into negotiations and were trying to extend the current arrangement. Under the terms of the peace treaty, the lease would be automatically renewed unless either of the parties notified the other party 1 year before it expires that it wished to terminate the agreement, the Jordanian Foreign Ministry said. Negotiations over ending the special treaty of the 2 areas would be tough, with Jordan facing thorny legal issues to reclaim the land where Israel laws now apply. So negotiations over ending the special regime is very, very precarious. Jordan is one of only 2 Arab states that has a peace treaty with Israel. The other is Egypt. They have also been expanding economic ties in the last year, including major deal to export billions of dollars of Israeli gas to the kingdom through a pipeline that crosses the northern borders. But the peace treaty with Israel is unpopular, and pro-Palestinian sentiment widespread in Jordan. Activists and politicians have been vocal against a renewal they say was humiliating and perpetuates Israeli occupation of the Jordan territory. So my question is, and I want to thank Alan of Texas for getting this information to me, but my question is this. If Jordan takes back this land from these Israeli farm owners and breaks this peace treaty with Israel, is it possible Israel will take back the Temple Mount away from Jordan, since that's actually Israeli land? And I've got breaking news to share with you right now. And that is, while we were on our tour in Israel, and we've got pictures of it, and we're going to show it to you. Melissa is sending the pictures to Heidi so that I can show you maybe in tonight's broadcast, or certainly by tomorrow. I'll try to show it to you tomorrow on these programs. And that is this: the cranes have been moved into the Temple Mount area. While we were there, I was looking at these cranes saying, where'd those come from? That crane wasn't there when I was here in May. And they started building a major area. Major foundations have been laid. The rebarb, the concrete's being poured. So I kept saying, what are they building? What are they building adjacent to the plaza at the western wall? What are they building? And the information, inside information we got is they've laid the foundation for a museum and a foundation for the house that will be the living quarters for the high priest of the third temple. You have not heard that anywhere else. I got that information given to me firsthand while in Israel. When I come back, we'll tell you more about that, folks. Tomorrow I'll show you the pictures. When we come back, we're going to hope to have with us, for the first time ever, a guest, Dr. Richard Dolan, a UFOologist, right here on The Coming Apocalypse. I have a brand new DVD entitled The Total Eclipse of the Sun. I mean, we have these great solar eclipses, the constellations in the heavens of Revelation 12, and many other signs that God gives in the last days. I have this DVD available at my website only. It's a powerful presentation of the coming of Jesus Christ and everything you need to know about his return. Get it now at my website. Folks, let me tell you something. I have a book I really recommend you should get. You go to my website at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. I have a book entitled The Zombie Apocalypse. Now, it has to do with 35 actual accounts of demonic possession and manifestations that is very troubling, but will help you understand how demon spirits actually work in these last days. I highly recommend you get it also for your teens and college students, to help explain to them the pitfalls to not fall into these sorcery or witchcraft seances, Ouija boards, or some video games that could alter the mind and the soul of your child. Again, this book, it's only at my website at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. There you'll find it on the products page. It'll be a blessing to you, insightful, and you'll bless the ministry. A brand new DVD, Rapture Ready. Finally, we're going to answer the question millions of people want to know. What is the rapture? When is the rapture? And am I ready for the rapture? Well, this brand new DVD is filled with information, scripture, a PowerPoint presentation that will help you prepare to be rapture ready. We're living in those days. Are you ready to meet the Lord? Get this DVD now at my website. A brand new book I've just finished called Reflections from the Land of the Prophets. This book is filled with beautiful pictures, a pictorial, if you will, of the Holy Land, and some definite great insight to the prophets that once spoke mightily in the times leading us up to the present. It's a prophetic word, a reflection of what God has spoken, not only historically from the past, but for the future. Go to my website. It's available now. Heidi Begley's got a brand new book called Finding My Father. Heidi, this is a miracle journey, isn't it? A miracle how you found your father.
A journey just full of miracles. He left when I was 3 months old, found him again when I was 30 years old, and it's just miracle after miracle.
It's a page turner, it's a tear jerker, and I guarantee it will change people's lives. So get a copy of her book right now at my website. Prophetic Letters for America. This two-part DVD will raise the faith within you and this nation. From our founding fathers to our current president, America has been blessed with the power of the Word of God. You will hear some of their prayers, presidential prayers that each president prayed, and their faith of the Bible. You have to get a copy of this DVD and be blessed in the Word.
The video is fine. I have no problem with that.
Okay, hang on. I have a brand new DVD entitled The Total Eclipse of the Sun. I mean, we have these great solar eclipses, the constellations in the heavens of Revelation 12, and many other signs that God gives in the last days. I have this DVD available at my website only. It's a powerful presentation of the coming of Jesus Christ and everything you need to know about his return. Get it now at my website. Heidi Begley's got a brand new book called Finding My Father. Heidi, this is a miracle journey, isn't it? A miracle how you found your father.
A journey just full of miracles. He left when I was 3 months old, found him again when I was 30 years old. And it's just miracle after miracle.
It's a page turner. It's a All right, guys, I'm back live. Richard Dolan is with us. I've been on the phone talking to him. We had a couple technical difficulties. We're going to get him on. We've got him on audio, but we want to get him on video so you can see him. And so he needed to reboot his computer. Give him 2 minutes, and we'll bring him on live. Now, Richard Dolan is a UFOologist, but he's actually an American historian, to be quite honest. And I'll let him tell his story. How he got involved in starting to investigate people who had testified or were saying that they had had an encounter of an extraterrestrial or some type of an encounter, something beyond this realm, let's say. And if you give me a second, I'll give you a little bit more of his bio for you real quick. Dr. Richard Dolan is... Dr. Richard Dolan, an American historian who specializes in UFO phenomenon, and he's the United States national security and the Cold War. These are his specialty areas. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, grew up in Brentwood, New York, over on Long Island, and he graduated from Alfred University with a bachelor degree of arts in English and history in 1984. Subsequently, he earned a Master of Arts degree in history from the University of Rochester in 1995. He's a Rhodes Scholar finalist. Richard Dolan has received certificates in political ideologies from Oxford, and he lives right now currently in Rochester, New York. He has written several books. We'll find out more about that. And he spoke for Steve Quayle in Branson, Missouri. All right. So there he is. All right. All right. How you doing? All right.
Hi, Paul. How's my voice coming through?
Perfect. All right. Perfect. I'm going to spin you around. All you're going to see is a little camera and maybe some glare in your face. I hope not. Brock, you're going to crop this for us. And
Beautiful. Did you just call your camera Barack?
No, his name is Brock.
Oh, I thought it was an homage to Barack Obama.
No. My son's name is Brock, not Barack. Brock.
I'm
Okay.
just giving you a hard time. So again, I want to make sure my microphone, if I tap my mic here.
That's perfect. You're loud and clear. Looks great. Let me just.
Thanks for letting me reboot.
No problem. No problem. Give me 1 second here. Now I need to fix one thing, and I can do that real.
I'm really happy to be doing this with you. Are we doing 2 hours or 1? I actually don't remember.
We're doing 1 hour. Okay.
Fine. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
No, don't worry. It's no worries. It's great to have you on as a guest. We're very, very honored to have you to come on, be with us.
As am I. I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
All right, folks. I was just reading Dr. Richard Dolan's bio, and as you can see, he's extremely. What's the matter? Am I hit the wrong thing? 1 second. 1 second, Richard. One second. We got.
Yeah, I don't know if you started, but it's nice that you call me doctor, but I'm not a PhD, so that would probably be best if you avoided that.
You're not a PhD, really?
No.
You should be, since you're not. I mean, you're a.
I did 2 100-page doctoral dissertations that I left in the middle of, so.
All right. Doctor, let me just say this. Since you're not Dr. Dolan, let's just say this, Richard. Thank you for coming on and be with us. You did a great job speaking at the Transhumanism Conference. I heard you speak there in Branson, Missouri, and we had time to have a little lunch, you and your wife, and you're very nice folks, and we thought you'd be great to come on here and help us with some things. Help me out here. I understand. You're really an American historian, right?
Well, I'm an American citizen, and I'm a historian, and I've been a student of American history for many, many years. I've also studied a lot of world history, a lot of European intellectual history, political history, geopolitics, world, international relations. But yes, a great deal of American history, absolutely.
So as you were doing some research and you like to dig deep, apparently you got involved with people who had encounters of an unexplained origin, let's say, and you began to pursue that. And I think, if I'm right, you've interviewed maybe as many as 68 people. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that?
Sure. I'm not sure about the number 68. I'm sure I've interviewed vastly more than that. But 25 years ago, I was in the process of writing a doctoral dissertation in U.S. Cold War policy. So we're talking early 1990s, and I was immersed in the world of Harry Truman and the early Cold War, the birth of the CIA and relations with the Soviet Union and so forth. And as a lot of people can imagine, that can be very all-encompassing by itself. And I was in a bookstore, and I saw a UFO book by the author Timothy Good. Tim's a friend of mine now. But at the time, I didn't know him, of course, and I just saw his book called Above Top Secret, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. And it's a big, fat book. I remember flipping through it and thinking, this seems to be pretty well put together. I had no knowledge at the time of UFOs. I mean, not more than the average person on the street, truthfully. But I was a big student of American let's say, covert studies of the 1940s and 50s. And as anyone knows, when you talk about UFO cover-up, everyone's talking about Roswell and the 1940s and 50s. So it was the period of time that I was really focused on. And I just had this moment of thinking, I don't like having these big question marks hanging over my head in something that's important to me. In other words, is there something there or is there not something there to all of the claims that people have made for years of a UFO reality and cover-up, right? I mean, everyone has heard this. And I just thought, well, I'm going to get this book, And I'm going to go online. Back then, we're talking early 1990s version of the internet, so there was no web to speak of. It was all news groups, right? And I just immersed myself. And I really started out with just one question. And the question was, is there a historical reality to the UFO phenomenon? Was the United States government and military ever interested in UFOs? If they were, why were they? Did they ever stop being interested? And so on. I mean, what I thought would be logical questions. And that really turned into, I mean, honestly, I have to say, an obsession, because I quickly discovered, yes, the United States military was absolutely interested in UFOs. And why? Well, there were objects that were not supposed to exist that were described as disc-shaped, and similarly, that were doing incredible maneuvers over very sensitive United States military bases and other facilities like nuclear research facilities and so on. And what I also learned furthermore is that these early analysts, we're talking again 1948, 49, 50, were asking all the logical questions that most people would want to ask. So number one, is this the Russians? Were the Russians building something super advanced and spying over our sensitive installations? And the answer appeared to be no. Another question is, well, is this something of ours? You know, after World War II ended, the United States, like the Russians and like other nations, got their own little cache of German scientists who had worked with the Nazis and often were Nazis. But of course, they were doing some very interesting science, and so they were valuable. And so the question was, is this some secret project of ours, maybe done with Nazi tech for all we know? And that's continued to be a question, to be perfectly honest with you. But again, I must say that there's not really a definitive answer on that. And in fact, I would go further and say the answer appears to be that wouldn't explain the majority of what we were looking at here.
You know, Richard, when you say about Nazi technology, I have looked at some videotape of 1939 of hovercrafts that were Nazis, definitely were German made, and they would look like what we call UFO spacecraft today, that or what we hear talked about. I mean, literally designed.
The Germans were working on some unconventional airplanes. So there was a German scientist named Victor Schauberger, for example, who did develop. He was really taken over by the SS. They forced him to work for them during the war. And he developed these disc-shaped objects that did exist. They were real things. And one was said to have done a test toward the end of World War II, and from what I was actually told by a scientist who had some knowledge of this, that the principles of what Schauberger were trying to do were sound, but the materials science of the Germans was not up to the task of having an object like this succeed in its in what they were trying to do with it. So my sense, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that yeah, the Nazis were trying certain things out. There are legends, there are stories. None of these are confirmed. There's the story of the bell, for example. It's an interesting story, but it's also, the bell was not an actual flying disc from what we understand. It was something totally different from everything I've been able to understand. So the question is, does Nazi tech explain the flying saucer UFO phenomenon of the late 40s? And my conclusion for many years has been no, it doesn't really explain it. And on top of that, you've got, innumerable, I mean, almost countless now accounts of people who have, I think, given reasonably believable testimony, frankly, of their encounters with non-humans in connection with these objects. So that's what we're dealing with. But going back to my entry point into this 25 plus years ago, it was my learning that the United States military took this subject deeply seriously and was lying to the public about it all the time. So that was the first wedge, that got me interested in asking, not really what is the solution to the UFO mystery. I was really, particularly at that time, in a very conservative frame of mind. I just wanted to know what the facts were as best that I could understand them. Was there a reality? Seemed to be that there was. Was there secrecy? Absolutely there was. Was there deep levels of concern by the hierarchy of the United States national security establishment? Answer, yes, 100%. And so that's what got me going. And as a result of that, I wrote initially a 500-page history called UFOs in the National Security State that covered the first 30 years, basically early 1940s to the early 70s. I wrote a 600-page follow-up called Volume 2, which covers up to the end of the Cold War, 1991. And for many years, I've been working on a third volume, which will take it to the present day. And it's a historical narrative that really describes what are the important sightings, what were the important military political responses, and also like what is the history of the civilian response to this, like ordinary people who've encountered this. Are there civilian UFO groups that are, want to study this and maybe end secrecy and all of that? So what I've tried to do is provide a comprehensive historical narrative, and I've written a number of other books in the meantime as well.
And let's talk a little bit about the, okay, so you've interviewed a lot of people that have had close encounters, have said that they've been abducted, and tell us what
I've primarily done a tremendous amount of archival and document-based research based on Freedom of Information requests, and not all of them mine, most of them not mine. There's been a lot of other researchers who've gotten government documents. That's the foundation. But I will say, yes, along these 20 plus years now, I have spoken to countless individuals who have just told me their own personal stories. And those have been, my goodness, those have been tremendous, fascinating in many cases.
So give us an example, give us collectively, what would be a typical story that you would get from folks that have had this experience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. One is a woman who, I spoke with her about a decade ago. She is a science writer. She wrote for some very, very high-level professional publications through the 90s and the early 2000s. I think she's retired now. But a very highly educated and sophisticated individual. And called me about a decade ago and said, look, I've never spoken to anybody about these experiences. They do trouble me. And I trust you, and I just want to tell you my story. So I said, fine. And like a number of other people I've spoken to, when I was chatting with her, she started to hyperventilate. She started to become very upset. Her heart started racing, she said. This is a phone interview. And she went back by describing an event from the late 1960s. She was out on a date with a guy. And just as she described this large craft coming down low over where they were driving, she said, my heart is racing, I can't do this. She hung up. 10 minutes later, she called me back. And I just remembered saying to her, look, I'm not a therapist, but I said, let's just take a breath. This is in the past. What happened then really can't hurt you now. And eventually she was able to tell me her story, which was a definite recollection, in her case, of non-humans that apparently took her, performed what some people now call the table procedures on her, and basically examined her, possibly did examination with a view to reproduction, taking an egg, maybe implanting eggs. This is typically what we now believe is going on. She also had a series of encounters, including Men in Black, which I would have to say she described in a very credible way to me.
Now, wait. Now, when you say Men in Black, so are you saying that encounters with, let's say, CIA or FBI,
That's the question. I mean, these guys are totally human-looking, most of them. Some researchers have said that they've found Men in Black, stories of beings that they're not quite human. In her case, and a lot of the ones that I've spoken to, I've talked to a number of Men in Black witnesses, a number, not a huge amount, but maybe a decent sized handful. And all the ones that I've gotten are just totally human. They could be a deep black government agency for all I know, that monitor this and that like to keep tabs on people who've had certain types of experiences. I think that has been the case. I don't know if that's still going on. In her case, she's talking early 1970s, late 60s. I'll just mention one other similar. Truck driver. Had long conversations with this guy. Back in the early 1980s, he was a young guy living in a apartment complex or a like a kind of a nice upscale complex. And he had some friends there, and they would talk about going fishing. This is in Ohio, and lots of lakes out there where he was. So the three of them decide to go night fishing. They take a 6-pack of beer, and they go with a fourth person who's a friend of theirs. So 4 people, 6 beers. That was the total I asked specifically. So no one was getting drunk here.
Right.
They were out on the lake in the middle of the night, and this is another one, as a matter of fact, he got very anxious, as he described this to me. Very anxious. He didn't hang up, but I recall distinctly asking him just to slow down. It's okay, this type of thing. You could tell 30 years after the fact he was still being traumatized by this event. But anyway, they saw a light that they couldn't identify. It got closer and closer, and eventually he said it looked gunmetal gray or bluish gray, and it was a low flying saucer, for lack of a better word. This is 1982. And the next thing they knew, they were not in the boat. They were on the shore, on the opposite side of this lake. The boat was on the shore with them, and they were looking up at this craft that was flying away, and that's when they all began to cry and become very upset. There's 3 men and 1 woman in this group, and they were just deeply, deeply upset. And his response was the most interesting to me. He said that he told his friends, as they were going on getting home, 2 to 3 hours after, of missing time, he said, "We are not supposed to talk about this. And if any of you ever talk about this, I'll never speak to you again. I'll never be your friend again." And he said to me, "Why would I say such a thing? Why would I say this?" Like, he didn't know why. They drove back. He never saw those people again. They, the couple that were good friends of his, left that complex almost immediately. And then the fourth person he didn't really know very well. And this is the early 1980s, before social media, before anything like that, and he lost touch with them. But I believe him. I found him to be a very credible person. A lot of other folks I've spoken to. In my office, I have hundreds of, probably over 1,000 UFO books on the shelf, and sometimes people will stop in and they'll say, "Oh, I don't believe in that stuff. Do you believe in that?" And of course, I have to say yes. And on one occasion, a woman, an ordinary working kind of woman, I don't think university educated at all. She said, "Well, I mean, honestly, I will tell you, I did have some very, very odd dreams about being abducted and so on. And I made the mistake of pulling out a book cover with an alien face on it. And I said, 'Well, did they look like this?' And she got very upset. She just said, 'Look, I don't want to talk about this anymore.'" So there's something going on, in my view, that are affecting a large number of people. And whatever the answer is, it's important, and I would say it's serious.
It's just my observations quickly is each time that the person you talked to had to recount their experience, they're getting very upset. Nobody's coming back and it was saying, "Boy, it was a pleasant ride. I took a nice little ride on a spaceship." It sounds like this is intrusive. It's traumatizing. It's fear gripping years later. And, I can tell you that we've talked to people who've had experiences, let's say, from a demonic side of it, different from what you're talking about, but just simply who have had encounters with what they would say spiritual demonic forces. And they will have a similar reaction anytime anybody that deals with, PTS, or anybody that's been in a traumatic. I can tell you, I was in a car accident where I crashed, I broke my neck, I was upside down underwater. And when I was able to survive this for the next year and a half, driving down the road would go into serious breakout in sweat just because I was driving down the highway. And to this day, I don't never want to be in the passenger seat because the guy who wrecked was driving. So I have this phobia or this intensity. So these people really, really, really experience something, is what you're saying.
I agree. Whatever's happening, it's important. I guess I should point out that not everyone who's had, or at least believes that they've had an experience, has described it in a negative way. And in fact, I mean, from my point of view, the people that I have spoken to, I suppose I would say that a large number have found their experience upsetting, right? But I wouldn't say everyone has said this to me. And there really is a different specific type of experience that some people describe. And I'll honestly say to you that I sometimes have a difficult time knowing what I think about these experiences. not all of them are something that I can easily grasp. It's like some people will claim that they've had a, like a telepathic download, one of the words that they'll use to describe a communication with other beings, and they describe these as very positive, or much more etheric in nature, in my view, the way they describe it. And they don't always describe them as negative, and they'll say these are beings from, the other parts of the galaxy and the Federation, and I mean, they'll use phrases like this. And they're here to help us move on to the next level of what humanity is supposed to be, and so forth. I want to point out that those people, I have had a very difficult time knowing what to do with some of these claims. They don't have a lot of specificity from my point of view, and it's a totally different order of magnitude from some of these difficult, traumatic ones that people have described to me. So I would say that this phenomenon does deal with, there's a lot of complexities to it. I often ask myself, like, how is it that we understand the things that we do? I mean, we have very excellent brains, and we've got sophisticated consciousness, without a doubt. But is it perfect? And I think the answer is no, it isn't. We have a certain way that we perceive reality. We perceive reality in this space-time bubble in which we live. And, physicists will now tell us that space and time are not just things that just go. They actually have their own limits. That is, space and time have a moment of creation. They'll call it the Big Bang. Theologians will call it the moment that God created the universe, before which there was no space and there was no time. This is contemporary physics. And so what that tells me is that space and time are constructions of a sort. We live within that construction, and our minds are designed to function within those constructions. But what if there were beings that figured out a way to do an end run around some of those limitations? And my view is it doesn't have to be an entirely spiritual, what we would call a spiritual type of entity. It is entirely possible, in my view, to do this technologically. We have scientists right now who believe that they have figured out a way to achieve what they call warp drive on Star Trek, right? What does that mean? It means by shrinking space and space-time in front of you and extending it behind you, you're in a bubble, and you're actually able to move. Within that bubble, you're not exceeding the speed of light, but the bubble itself is warping space-time. And it's kind of a loophole around light and space distances. My point is simply that if there were a civilization that had access to technology that could do this, it could seem almost kind of magical to us. And it could almost seem like they're moving in and out of our dimensions of reality, so to speak. But they could be just as physical as you and me.
It's good.
Theories. I mean, I'm just speculating, but I think that it's a possibility.
Well, it's kind of interesting, very interesting, because we have instances in the Bible where we have Jacob goes to sleep, and he has this ladder that goes up into heaven, and he sees angels coming in, down, up and down it. Apostle Paul actually says that he goes into the third heaven. He said, whether I'm in the body or out of the body, I don't even know. So, and we know that Peter went into a trance and seen things. So, I mean, yeah, there's accounts in the Bible. Matter of fact, there's all kinds of things, like Philip was translated. He showed up 20 miles later in the desert somewhere preaching to a guy in a chariot. So there's ancient script. I mean, we can go back not only just biblical texts, but we can go into ancient script. There have been all kinds of discussions or accounts of some kind of fascinating supernatural transition. So it shouldn't shock us that some of that's today. So, Richard, let me ask you a question, because you talk about the cover-up. And the word we keep hearing now all the time now is disclosure. That are we in the era of disclosure? So what have you seen? And you've been doing this a long time. And at first it was hush, 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 hush. Is there a change? Is there an openness now? Is the government going to allow everybody to participate? What is your take on what's happening about the terminology of disclosure?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Paul. It's true. I believe that there is a cover-up. I think the cover-up of the UFO reality actually goes beyond the United States government, although the U.S., at least in what we call the Western world, completely dominates that. The United States dominates militarily, and in the intelligence world, dominates its NATO allies, Israel and South American countries and so forth. And so the U.S. is really running this. Russia and China are wild cards, but maybe we can talk about them another time. And there's been a cover-up because this is a very important thing. It's a revolutionary reality. I mean, if you were President Harry Truman back in the 1940s and this information came to you, like, for example, your generals and top people say, sir, not only have we confirmed that there are these others that are here, but we recovered some of their technology. Let's say Roswell happened. And indeed, we recovered some bodies, and maybe a live one. This has been believed, and I personally think it's true. If it's true, what would the president do? Would the president actually tell the world? I mean, we often think, well, the president should tell the world. And I would probably be inclined to agree with that, but there'd be a lot of uncertainty there. You don't really know if these beings are hostile or not. So what do you tell the public? That's a big nightmare right there. And then you've got, you don't know how public panic, how bad it might be. It could be severe. The world was just recovering from the Second World War at the time, and there were a lot of other issues to deal with. And then, of course, there's the whole technology part of it. In 1947, the United States didn't want to share its atomic technology with the world. That was a very big issue at the time. Why would they possibly want to share something as exotic as alien tech if that were the case? I mean, they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't. They wouldn't want to give it to the Russians or any other potential adversary. So I suspect, and I think this is what happened, that President Truman would say, all right, let's figure out our game plan. We're going to look at this quietly for a certain period of time. Maybe we'll reconvene in 5 years and make a decision, and so on. But secrecy has a way, I believe, of maintaining itself and of growing and developing its own profitability as well. After all, if you've got secret technology, well, you're holding the future in your hands. And then, of course, this gets segued out to private tech, private industry, where you can make a fortune on this. And anyone who's really studied the government understands that you've got an enormous amount of money, financial power, and industrial power, but mostly financial power behind our politics now. So I think what we're seeing is that the secret became a money-making and a very, very great power, a great powerful lever that certain individuals have gained, and they don't want to give it up. They absolutely don't want to give it up. The thing is, though, they're not the only factor in the equation anymore. We're in a world that is rapidly going through technological and social revolutions. I mean, we have the internet now. You and I are able to have this conversation. We couldn't have imagined this 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But we're doing it now, and it's easy. So we're able to communicate in a way that wasn't conceivable in earlier times. And so what that means is the global situation is very unstable. And I think in terms of the UFO subject, we're seeing this happen. We're seeing the irresistible force hit the immovable object. Secrecy and the power structure is the immovable object.
You're right. You're right about it.
Irresistible force.
It's amazing. We're having this conversation, you and I. Thousands of people are watching us have this conversation. It's being archived everywhere. And if somebody said that 100 years ago, said, one day people will sit down and do what we're doing, you would say, well, what planet are you from? Okay. I mean, are you serious? I mean,
exactly.
So the technological advancement, the era we're in, obviously it would be very difficult now to keep a lid on it, okay? There's no way that the CIA or anybody else, I mean, the secret alphabet soup agencies, they're not going to be able to keep it quiet forever, right?
I've felt that way, but here's the thing. Like, what they've done is have preponderant influence over what we will call mainstream media. And they dominate it. And they dominate the academic world as well, actually. And they dominate the political world. So, in the early Cold War, we know of a program that was called Operation Mockingbird. And I've talked about this many times. But basically, Mockingbird was a CIA Cold War news management operation. It went for decades. They had American journalists secretly on their payroll, spinning news for them, often making up fake news, like literally making up fake news on behalf of the United States intelligence community to overthrow governments and to do the other things they wanted. American citizens had no conception that this was happening. Now, Mockingbird supposedly ended in the 70s, but the domination by the intelligence community over our media is so profound. And it's not just U.S. media, it's European media as well. A lot of good study has been done on this. So that's the media. So they control spin. So folks like you and I and other people can talk about these things, and it is creating a growing alternative knowledge community. But they're running into the obstacle of the mainstream establishment, the corporate media, the intelligence community establishment, however you want to call it, the deep state, many people are now calling it. And that's still a factor, of course. So they're hanging on in this way. The academic community, I think, it's very similar. I've done a lot of study on this, the penetration by the intelligence community of top-level U.S. academia and global academia. This is, I think, has been studied a great deal. Yale University, I think, was the primordial, clearinghouse for a lot of CIA people, but it's very widespread indeed. And the political environment. People need to understand our politicians. We like to say, well, vote the bums out. But the problem is that, one of the great unspoken realities of our politics is blackmail and bribery.
Right.
So, most people have a price, and everyone has got can be easily compromised and controlled. And this is a significant part of our politics. So there's actually a great deal of behind-the-scenes control that is there. And it doesn't mean that the people aren't eventually going to be able to overcome these obstacles, but they are definite obstacles. And that's, I think, how they're maintaining by their fingernails the pretense of this reality. I firmly believe there's a number of things in our world that are, let's call them big truths, that are denied by our established official culture, as I often call it. UFOs is a major one, but I think that there's others as well. But the UFO secret is such a revolutionary one. I wrote a book on this called After Disclosure, in which I tried to understand, how could an end of UFO secrecy happen, and then most significantly, what next? Like after the end of UFO secrecy, how might it revolutionize or transform our world? And by the end of the book, it occurred to me in a very, very significant way. And I think that was the reason why those people who have genuine access to this information are not likely voluntarily to give it up.
Folks, our guest, Richard Dolan, he's put that book up there again, Brock. We've been showing periodically, Richard, as we've been talking. You have a book out called UFOs and Disclosure in the Trump Era, an 85-page analysis by Richard Dolan. Tell us about this book a little bit.
Absolutely. It's primarily, I would call it an international geopolitical analysis of UFO secrecy and how that secrecy might fare in the next coming few years with the ascension of Donald Trump to the presidency. Most of the book isn't about Trump, so I guess I should say that, but the last segment of it is, and deals in a speculative way as to how Trump might interact with this secret. But fundamentally, I guess I would just say is a lot of that booklet deals with how does an international UFO secret work? Like, really, people will ask me frequently, well, okay, so there's the United States, and they have secrecy on this. Okay, we get that. But what about Canada? What about Brazil? What about France? What about all the other nations in the world? How is it that they're kept in line? And what about Russia and China and other countries like that? And I spent a lot of time trying to understand that issue. And as I was saying earlier in this chat that we're having, the U.S. allies are never, ever going to break ranks with the United States on this issue. And one of the reasons is they're all blackmailed as well. When Edward Snowden came out with his revelations a couple of years ago about massive NSA spying on the population, illegally, I should hasten to add, all illegal spying done on people.
Right.
One of the things he pointed out is that the NSA's also got its hooks into every major leader of the world,
Right.
Angela Merkel, there was a big to-do when it came out that the NSA was monitoring her cell phone and her email, and they had to kind of work their way through that. And then the president of Brazil at the time, a lady named Dilma Rousseff, and her entire cabinet, it came out, were also, their phones were all monitored by the NSA and so forth. So my point is this. If you're the leader of another nation and you're saying, you know what, the heck with the United States and their secrecy on this, we're going to do this anywhere, we're going to release a secret. Well, if you're going to do that, you'd better be very, very super efficient and very secretive and very careful, because they know every step you're making. They know every conversation you're having. And believe me, they have got ways to take you down before you make a move. They took Dilma Rousseff down, as a matter of fact, in what was called the Wall Street coup just a couple of years ago, soft coup of her government in Brazil. So this is how the U.S. operates behind the scenes with all these countries. But then there's Russia and there's China. And how is it that they don't break ranks, right? They're not under the U.S. thumb. And the U.S. is actively trying to take down the Russian government now, which I think is extremely misguided, but that's another conversation. And China is outside the U.S. sphere as well. So why are they going along with this? And I don't have all the answers, but you can look at the politics of Russia and China, and I think the answer is right there. These are both, like the U.S. structure, very ultimately conservative, hierarchical structures where those people who are in the know don't really have much incentive for giving this secret up. It's a very radical piece of information. I mean, if there are beings, as I think, that are here among us, intensely telepathic, with radical technology, representing a civilization that is nothing like our own, and that is not congenial to our own. It doesn't mean I think they want to enslave us or eat us necessarily, but I do think that their ways are not our ways. Then I think it would be a deeply, deeply disturbing and upsetting thing, and I don't think any political leader knows how to deal with it. Now, relating to Donald Trump, I do have some things to say about him, and Trump, to me, is, well, I think to a lot of people, he's certainly the most interesting president that we have had maybe since Kennedy, in the sense of it's obvious, like as a candidate, that Trump was, let's say, demonized, if I can use that word, by most of the corporate establishment for two reasons. And really this has to be acknowledged. Reason number one is that he criticized what we might call neoliberal globalization. The outsourcing of American jobs, the end of the American middle class, and the working class as well.
Right.
By the way, I would point out, this is the exact same talking points that were done 20 years earlier by Ralph Nader from the left. Ralph Nader said the same thing, and he was just as right as Trump was in 2015, 2016 about the effects of globalization. And it's not that we can't, or that a globalization mustn't happen. It's inevitable in certain ways, but we should be able to have control over how that process goes.
Well, I think
what Nader said and what Trump was saying.
Yeah, when you think about it, Richard, is you're right. Trump realized that globalization was not necessarily in the best interest of the United States. He was trying to look for a balance. I think at the end of the day, you can be completely an isolationist, and at the end, that's not good either, because that will ultimately hurt you. And
what you see is that the media portraying him as exactly that, as like a rabid isolationist, which was never the case either.
No, he's built buildings in major nations all over the world. The guy understands how to do global business while protecting his own base, and I think that if they would have trusted him a little bit more and wait to see and I think that's what's happening. You see his poll numbers going up now because the economy the economy is booming everywhere. And so you finally say, hey, maybe this guy was right. Let me ask you a question. If he had yes, go ahead.
The other pillar that he attacked, now it wasn't just neoliberal globalization, but I would also say as a candidate particularly, he attacked neoconservative empire. So the wars, The war against Iraq, he opposed that. The war against Libya, which destroyed that entire nation. We never even talk about this. It was a horrible crime that the United States and NATO perpetrated. He criticized that. He criticized the U.S. war in Syria, which I think he was right to do. And for that reason, he incurred the enmity of the neocon and the, let's call them the global empire builders, which really have dominated Republican and Democratic administrations for many years. And that means CIA. That means the FBI. They wanted him gone too. So he made enemies of kind of the globalist and the neocon elements of the American power structure. And they go after him on cultural issues, because that's really the main weakness he has. And the fact that he often will sound like he's 11 years old doesn't help, right?
Right.
But I'm from New York. I grew up with trash-talking guys from Brooklyn and Queens. It didn't really, like, that to me was normal. But I think for a lot of the country, the way he speaks is jarring. And so they pick things that they can easily go after. But I've always felt the real reasons are those two pillars: neoliberal globalization, neoconservative empire. As a president, in my view, he has caved to some extent to the neocons, but there's still this kind of sense of that he's different, and I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, you know, your analysis is dead on. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he has done just that. He has irritated the European Union because of his holding back on the globalization area. The neocons, he's drove them nuts because he won't turn them completely loose. And he's given them a little, but he's not going to give them everything they want. And the other thing I think that the president has done is he's looked at everything in a perspective of, hey, okay, sometimes things are just not right, okay? And he's not afraid to say, look, that's just wrong, okay? And I don't care how that's going to play out politically. It's just wrong. We need to fix that. But at the same time, he says things and does things. He's sort of like Samson in the Bible. You know, he was a super strong guy, but he had his own weaknesses. And so those end up tearing him down.
Oh, yeah.
What would happen, Richard?
Is his strength and his weakness. It is a strength. It's like the Teflon coating that nothing seems to bother him. But it also it does get him into pettiness, petty arguments that really do not help him politically. Relating to UFOs, if I may just finish that train of thought with Trump, I don't have his ear, and I've never spoken to people prominent in the Trump administration, obviously, but I think that he's enough of an outsider to that system. And in fact, having lived his life as a private citizen, a wealthy private citizen, but as a private citizen, who similarly, I think he's been friendly to the alternative media. I mean, he was on Alex Jones's show, for example. So all of these things let me speculate that he is probably at least somewhat familiar with UFOs as a phenomenon and might be interested, for all I know. And the fact that he is to some extent separate from the establishment, and to the extent that he believes that he's the guy, he's the one, right? I've often imagined, could he send out a 2 a.m. tweet saying, people, everyone knows aliens are real. The cover-up, sad. You know?
He may be...
I can almost imagine that.
He may be the ultimate guy that brings the full disclosure. Well, let me ask you a question, Richard. If Donald Trump has walked into an underground lab somewhere and and he encounters something from another world, what do you think he says to an alien? What would Donald Trump actually say to an alien?
From all of the research that I've done on our interactions with these other beings, they have all the cards. I don't really think we do. So in terms of, we have a vibrant, creative, beautiful civilization. We have beautiful art. We have beautiful music. We have great literature. I don't think they do that. At least that's not the impression that we're getting in the research. But what they do have is intense, powerful neurological capabilities that allow them to dominate their interactions with us. So if they were to kind of let it down and let him speak, that might be one thing. But I don't know that's how they operate. And I don't know. I've not gotten any indication through any kind of, let's say, abduction research that they have any kind of comprehension or understanding or interest in our politics. I don't really know if that's how they operate. They don't seem to. There's never been an indication that they have political interests themselves, or that they would even know, how to have a prominent conversation with an American politician. There are all kinds of stories, some of them apocryphal. I don't really know how true they can be, that may say otherwise, but I don't really have the sense, from my perspective where I'm looking at it, that they work like that. So I don't really know what a president would say.
Let's talk about.
I wondered what I would say. It's like, I would like to know what is their best philosophy of life. What is their? Do they have a spirituality? Do they have a sense of humor? Do they have family? I don't know if they have a lot of those things.
Richard, it was a fascinating conference in Branson, Missouri, and we heard a lot of great speakers. And I want to just get your take on transhumanism just a little bit. The AI technology, it's advancing extremely rapid. And we got Elon Musk telling us, don't let the demon out. I mean, what's your take on the advancement of AI technology?
Well, yeah, I was really grateful to have the opportunity to go there, to meet you and to meet so many other really wonderful people at that event. And I think all of the presenters seemed to be pretty much on board with the same perspective, which is that we all had a lot of trepidation, reservation, and even fear of transhumanism running amok. That is this idea that, it's one thing to say, with gene editing, we can eliminate some of these diseases and let you live a healthier life. And who wouldn't want that, we would think, right? That would be wonderful. But then, of course, how far does it go? It's one thing to have pharmaceuticals to extend human lifespan, but then you've got ideas like cloning, stem cell tech, organic 3D printing to grow and replace your organs and body parts. Then there's artificial implants and enhancements to your body and brain, and nanotech to combat your diseases, and the redesign and resequencing of the human genome, all in the service of, in I think the minds of some of these Frankenstein-type transhumanists, as a way to conquer death, to live forever. There are transhumanists out there who talk literally about becoming the very gods of the ancient world, that people would talk about. And to me, like I think most of the people who presented here, I have a very strong fear of utopians. Not a fan of utopians. I think they're dangerous people in general. That is the idea that if only we radically change the way human beings have been into this idea that I think is the best idea, then we'll have a perfect society. Utopians have existed throughout human history, and they've all left a trail of blood behind them. And I don't trust individuals who have this idea that we can create a paradise. What would it be like if you were to live for 500 years? I mean, I've wondered this. Like, what would you do? Would you go into your job every day for 500 years? That would stink, wouldn't it? What would people do? I think the transhumanists, like you think, I'm living 500 years for this. For the transhumanists, I think it's all about playtime forever. They want to rock and roll all night.
It's immorality. Immortality. It's the ability to be godlike. I think is what they really are trying to achieve, and also to have a significant situation. Looks like we've lost Richard here. Richard, phone home. Richard, phone home. Okay, we've lost him. Maybe we've lost the internet for all I know. I don't know. We've lost everybody. Have we? Okay, are you sure? Because I'm still showing that we're still live. Hang on, Brock. Hang on. We may still be live. I don't know. We may have gone down here. Are we completely down? Yeah, you need to